welcome to the Mount Carmel Family Gathering. I'm David Blackstead, the Program Director here at Mount Carmel.
And I'm Tim Peterson, the Executive Director. Welcome home in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And now let's have some music.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Miller. I bring you greetings from Locust Grove, Virginia. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of the Mount Carmel worship time this evening. My family and I have been to Mount Carmel the past 2 summers, and all of us are just absolutely in love with the place and the folks who work there. And again, I'm very honored to be with you this evening. Let's start off with a song called Unfailing Love. Call to you and we know you'll answer. Listen as we pray. Show us your unfailing love in wonderful ways. We call to you and we know you'll answer. Listen as we pray. Show us your unfailing love in wonderful ways. Save us with your strength. You give us help in time of need. You save us with your strength. You give us help in time of need. Yeah. We call to you and we know you'll answer. Listen as we pray. Show us your unfailing love in wonderful ways. We call to you and we know you'll answer. Listen as we pray. Show us your unfailing love in wonderful ways. You save us with your strength. You give us help in time of need. You save us with your strength. You give us help in time of need. Yeah. We call to you and we know you'll answer. Listen as we pray. Show us your unfailing love in wonderful ways. We call to you and we know you'll answer. Listen as we pray. Show us your unfailing love in wonderful ways. Wonderful ways. Wonderful ways. Thank you. One more song to sing together. I'm anxious to be back with you folks, to be back at Mount Carmel this summer. My family and I are going to be out there doing music and leading worship with my friend Brian Spar, and I know his family out there together. Brian actually wrote that last song when we performed together as Mudhouse. So here's an original tune, and I'm anxious to be able to sing it with you in person someday. So this is called I Hear Your Heartbeat. I hear your heartbeat in every roll of thunder. I see your smile. Whenever lightning lights the sky, I see your hand across the oceans, and I feel your love in the vast array of stars above, in the vast array of stars above. I hear your heartbeat. In every roll of thunder, I see your smile. Whenever lightning lights the sky, I see your hand across the oceans, and I feel your love in the vast array of stars above, in the vast array of stars above. And the stars go on forever, but the measure of your love is even more. I would give up all my treasure for the promise of what you have in store. I hear your heartbeat in every roll of thunder. I see your smile. Whenever lightning lights the sky, I see your hand across the oceans, and I feel your love in the vast array of stars above, in the vast array of stars above. And the stars go on forever, but the measure of your love is even more. I would give up all my treasure for the promise of what you have in store. I hear your heartbeat in every roll of thunder. I see your smile. Whenever lightning lights the sky, I see your hand across the ocean, and I feel your love in the vast array of stars above, in the vast array of stars above, in the vast array of stars above.
So much, Todd, for that music. I think Todd's posting songs each Sunday night. He has a little segment on Facebook, so you can find him there.
We want to thank everybody who has come for the 4 weeks of blessing, which we are having now here at Mount Carmel. And we want to remind everybody that you can still sign up for our family camps and our adult camps. We are trying to run our camps the way we normally do. We do have to make some changes because of the epidemic, but we're going ahead with all of our family camps and our adult camps, and we hope that more of you will consider coming to those. And and of course, the worship, that's right. I need to mention, we're starting our worship here at Mount Carmel. We actually started today on the day of Pentecost. We had morning worship, and we'll be having it every Sunday at 9. It'll be outdoors, so if you can come, make sure that you're dressed appropriately. As you know, it can be quite cool in the mornings here with the wind coming off the lake.
And now we transition to another song.
Nothing can compare. Your
So now we're going to transition to our special guest tonight, Paul Oman. Paul Oman is a great friend of Mount Carmel. If you've been in our sanctuary, you see 4 of his big paintings up in the sanctuary. And if you like what you see and hear tonight, Paul's going to be here this summer, June 29th through July 3rd, working alongside a Crossways teacher. So Tim Schaefer, the original teacher, is no longer able to join us that week, but we will have somebody stepping in to teach the Crossways along with Paul. So with that, I guess we'll say, hello, Paul. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here with you and to come back to Mount Carmel.
Awesome. So good to be with you tonight virtually. I know there's lots of people watching that have seen you paint and love your artwork. So I guess just to get us started tonight, we have a few questions we're wanting to ask. So I was curious if you could say a little bit about Drawn to the Word and the ministry you do there, and how that all kind of got started.
Yes, it's been a fun and surprising journey. I've always liked to paint and draw since I was a little kid, never thinking I would use it beyond it being a hobby. But I used it as I was a science teacher in the Twin Cities. I would draw everything that I would teach, or at least as much as I could. Just kept painting on the side in my spare time. And then as I went to seminary, I started using my art to depict some of the Bible stories. But the more I painted in watercolor, the faster I was able to see the vision of what I wanted to do and to lay it down and have it come to life three-dimensionally, that I started thinking as I was serving as a pastor, maybe I can paint the story live. And that initial thought came to me back in 1998 when I was asked to paint a huge mural backdrop for a Christmas dinner theater at Lake Wapagasset Lutheran Bible Camp in Amory, Wisconsin. And the night I showed up to paint it, I had these paint rollers, like the 12-inch rollers on these long broom handles because the canvas was 13 feet tall. But the choir was there rehearsing. And as they were singing and I was painting, an image sort of emerged and came together. And I thought, boy, there's maybe something to this. If I could only paint faster, maybe this would work. And a few years went by. And as I was in my first call, I decided to give it a try on Good Friday in 2006. And we just collaborated with the choir and readers, musicians, soloists, all these things. And the process was born really that night as the crucifixion scene came together on canvas and through the Word. And since then, I resigned from that call in 2011, and I've been serving in this ministry that I call Drawn to the Word since 2011. And it continues to go. It's been a little challenging lately with the coronavirus because most of my events have been postponed or canceled. However, I'm continuing to try and develop new ideas, downloadable images for digital worship and things like that. So it's kind of fun to see how this journey, how God opens up the pathway in front when I can't really see. And that's another exciting part of it. I can try and set all the goals I want, but it seems like whatever goal I set, there's a redirect that gets applied right over the top of it. And so then I have to listen to that and change direction and follow that. But Mount Carmel's been a great part of this journey and a network as well.
Well, we've loved having you at Mount Carmel, Paul, and I don't remember when I first saw you here. But it's quite a few years ago now, I know, and we are so pleased that you're coming back. And of course, again, having your paintings up here in front of the chapel, to have that picture from Mount Carmel with Elijah and the fire, that's been a wonderful thing for us. Can you say a little bit about the Crossways that you're going to be teaching alongside of now?
Yes.
Well, it's just about a month away. That's right, coming up soon.
Right, coming up real soon. Crossways for me has been so meaningful when I was serving as a pastor, and I was actually introduced to Harry Wendt at Mount Carmel back in maybe 2004 or 5, somewhere in there. And I really became hooked on his approach to teaching and using visuals. And the story became so memorable to use it that way. And so I've taught through the Crossways materials a number of times myself. And it it'll be a lot of fun to partner with someone who teaches Crossways and then paint the story and also have that understanding of where Crossways goes with the materials and being able to see that vision, that thread that leads through that curriculum. And I hope that's the result for other people who experience Crossways, is that very visual and memorable way of learning the Bible story. The key thing to me for Crossways is that Jesus is always kept as the center all the way through. And so you begin to see the big picture, the whole of Scripture, rather than individual stories or books. Crossways helps one see how it all links together, and Jesus just rises up out of that larger than life. It's just a beautiful thing.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm excited to hear it.
You know, I don't know if I should admit this, but I have never heard the Crossways material, because, you know, my family has been at Mount Carmel every year for the last 22 years. But that particular year you're talking about, my wife and kids were here, but I was deployed in Kosovo, so I missed Crossways, but I'm going to get it this year, and I'm looking forward to it. And I sure look forward to you being a part of that, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, with that, I think we'll give it over to you, Paul. And
yeah, so I'm just going to bring us through. I'll turn this around here. Oops. I want to bring us through just one concept here, something we'll take a look at just for part of our instruction this week. Here's some paintings I've done, and they're fairly large scale. And if you've seen me paint, I usually paint on 6 or 7 or 8 foot tall canvases. And just by seeing this image here, you might be able to guess what story it's from in the Bible, one of the more memorable stories. But if you haven't guessed that it's Moses leading the Israelites through the Red Sea as the Egyptians are pursuing them, perhaps you've landed on another story, and I think that's the beauty of art. And so to put a visual with the story allows people to see beyond just the particular story that might be intended, rather than someone saying, oh, you're wrong, that's not the right story. No, I think that's a wonderful process. But my intention, as I painted this, was for this to be Moses, and he raises his staff, as you may recall from the story, and the Red Sea is parted. I don't know exactly what that looked like, but I thought, as I depicted this, I've painted this scene, variations of it many times. I thought, you know, what if I have this dark chasm here that is ominous in appearance? And so here artistically, I thought, are the people going down and across, or are they coming up and out? You know, it could be either way, depending on how you look at this. As Moses raised his staff, is he standing here as a sentinel, let's say, as the people move across? This is all open for visual interpretation as you hear the scripture read along with it. And I like that. And so even though there's a lot of darkness back here, even lightning up here, I often like to catch some sense of light, like here's a rim lighting on the shoulders and the hair, and then the shadows are cast. That really brings it to life when a painting has shadows in there. At least that's how I see paintings. But a concept I want to touch on here just for a minute today is the concept of God as darkness. Now that's kind of strange if you haven't heard that before. Do you know where this story is from? I mean, it's right along that same sequence here, isn't it? The Exodus story. And so then the Israelites cross through. They're disgusted with Moses for bringing them out into the wilderness. And, you know, no food, no water, but God provides. They get to Mount Sinai, and here they're camped out. And if you can see in the distance here, they're all camped down below. As I took artistic license to just guess what Moses might look like. Probably not like that at all, but nonetheless, here's a face that is being illuminated by this spotlight of light as God's finger writes the commandments, the Sinai covenant, on these tablets. And Moses is viewing that. But God is darkness. If you look at Exodus chapter 20, verse 21, the verse, it says there, Then the people stood at a distance while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. The thick darkness where God was. And you hear of this image of darkness connected to the presence of God throughout the Old Testament in particular. Well, what's so profound about that, and I learned this through Crossways, is that God, you hear different interpretations. Maybe the darkness keeps the brightness, the pure white light brightness of God from harming the people who cannot see God directly, or else that brightness is just too much. That's one possibility with it. But nonetheless, God would travel with the people in the tabernacle, and that tabernacle eventually became the temple. And in the center of the temple was the Holy of Holies. And by Jesus' day, you have that Holy of Holies is blocked off, and only once a year the high priest can enter to make for the forgiveness, the atonement of sins of the people. Well, in that Holy of Holies, I'm just going to move right up here beyond this light. Isn't that fun to look at this up close? Beyond that light, we're going to look at the darkness here. And inside that Holy of Holies is darkness. The darkness is there, and there God resides. It's the holiest place. This now moving up to the time of Jesus. But when we get to the New Testament, we discover that now God all of a sudden is light. God is light. In John chapter 1, verse 5, we have, let's see here. Zoom right in on that. I don't know if you can see that here, but the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. And there are other passages in 1 John 1, chapter 1, verse 5. This is the message we have heard from him and proclaim to you, that God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. God is light. So we have these images of God as light and God as darkness, both held together. It's almost like perhaps the paradox of the gospel. You have sin and salvation, death, resurrection, blind can see, lost and found. So many of these things connect together. So what I am going to do is give this to my daughter, who's going to be the videographer, and let's work this just a little bit with paint and paper. I start out my paintings usually with a quick little watercolor sketch, and that's where I catch my vision for painting the large mural. And I'm just going to say, what if we start with darkness? And lots of it. And this is just for fun here. I don't even have a sketch on here. I'm just playing with this. Let's try and depict perhaps a suggestion of the temple in Jesus' day. Maybe that temple will sit right in here. And there were doors or a curtain in the front of that temple, big pillars on the side, and the balustrade and the wall, the walls around it. But using artistic license to move from here outward, I want to connect this light and darkness theme to the crucifixion. So as Jesus was crucified, we'll make this the hill of Calvary outside of the city walls of Jerusalem. Now you might be saying, well, that's not far enough away from the temple. But remember, this is a piece of artwork. And let's put the cross there. And as we know, there were others crucified with Jesus. We'll have another one there. And then let's put a third one here at a real steep angle, like so. I don't need that one to show up too much. So the quick little sketch gives me a vision for an idea that I can place on a large canvas, and I work it out in more detail than this. But this is where it starts. Now, for the crucifixion, let's put the body of Jesus on the cross here, like so. And let's have his head hanging down. So maybe the viewer can sense or feel that pain. Here's the sign, perhaps, they hung above him. Just a little silhouette. And we've got the two thieves on the cross here next to Jesus, one there, and this one here will be hidden in the shadows, more or less. I'm going to add a little more water in here. If you've painted watercolor, you know how tricky it can kind of be, especially when it's all wet yet. But let's minimize the amount of light and bring darkness into most of this. Now, from what I shared about the image of God as darkness and the Holy of Holies in the center of the temple, it says that Jesus was crucified, depends which version, which gospel you read the story in, there's variations within it. But Jesus was crucified, and then as either before he died in Mark's gospel, I believe it is, or in some of the others, as he dies, darkness covers the land. How many of you, I'm going to enhance this character on the cross over here. How many of you have assumed, without even thinking about it, that the darkness that has covered the land is a sign of God's absence? And we even hear Psalm 22 read on Good Friday, how Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" It seems as though it's an absence of God. But if God is connected to a symbol of darkness, and as Jesus dies, that darkness in the center of the temple, as the temple curtain is torn, focus right here. I'm going to make that temple curtain red. The temple curtain is torn in two. Let's put a dark line in here. From top to bottom, from heaven to earth, it is torn. And now, the darkness that resided in the Holy of Holies is out of the temple and is spreading across the land and ultimately across the world to us here this evening as we hear this word. Doesn't the crucifixion of Jesus and this particular story of the darkness take on new and a fuller meaning by understanding that? The darkness, the presence of God spreading across the land. Let's add some color to the temple here. You can keep focusing on that, Emily. And I just want you to hear this story. Now that you know that about this, it says, this is the death of Jesus. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? And when some of the bystanders heard it, they said, this man is calling for Elijah. And at once one of them ran, got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, gave it to him to drink. But the others said, wait, let's see whether Elijah will come to save him. Then Jesus cried out again, the loud voice, and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks were split, the tombs were also opened. Many of the bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And after his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. And now when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what had took place, they were terrified and said, truly this man was God's son. There it is, that Old Testament symbol of God's presence being brought forward, and Jesus reinterprets it through his life, death, and ultimately resurrection, and through the either the understandings or misunderstandings of the people at that time, now we get a more clear picture. Fascinating, interesting. So this along with many other parts, we're going to take just a sweep through the timeline, the Crossways timeline, and land in a few places each day. And what I'm hoping to do here is for the first hour, we are going to do a study. In the second hour, I'll do a painting. Every day will be another painting. We get to reflect on that and enter into it. But beyond that, at least half of our time together each day will be structured as studio time. So we get to actually engage using the arts. So don't be intimidated, because you don't have to be able to draw or anything. These will be fun, simple things, but I want you to engage in a way that the art can be memorable in connection to the biblical story and the promise that Jesus gives. And so I hope you can join us for that week at Mount Carmel. And I am really excited to be back and to be with you.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. I'd never heard of that way of depicting, the darkness spreading over the land and God being with us. Very cool.
Sure. Thank you for joining us tonight, Paul. And again, looking forward so much to you being here at Mount Carmel. It's wonderful to hear the story again. You heard the story again tonight, and we will hear it again while you're here. Thank you for that.
You are very welcome. Can't wait. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, David.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight for this special evening family gathering at Mount Carmel. We can't wait to see you next Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time with Brian Spar, who'll be giving us a special message. Until then,